Now, the presidential villa remains a beehive of activities from consultations to series of talks. President Bola Tinubu has been meeting with traditional and religious leaders, politicians, and even players in the private sector, all in his efforts to bring renewed hope to Nigerians. State House correspondent Deswa Mora has more.
As the new president settles into office and prepares to make appointments, the presidential villa has been a hub of visits. Today, among the visitors were the members of the former PDP G5 governors, consisting of the immediate past governors Nyesom Wike of Rivers State, Okezie Ikpeazu of Abia State, Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi of Enugu State, Samuel Otom of Benue State, and the current governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde. While still in power, these five governors had previously demanded the resignation of Iyorchia Ayu as national chairman of their party and worked against the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar during the 2023 polls. Emerging from the meeting with President Tinubu, Seyi Makinde speaks on behalf of the group.
You have to keep evaluating, what you're doing, where you're going, and so we have to keep seeing the president, to let him know what is happening. And for this evening, the G5, the integrity group, we also came to let the president know what we stood for: fairness, justice, and equity. And we haven't changed.
Governor Peter Mba of Enugu State also visited the presidential villa. He took the opportunity to present a number of requests to the president, including echoing the Southeast region's demand for the release of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB.
We've taken a bold view of what Enugu could achieve in the next 4 years in terms of growing our economy from the current levels to $30 billion. And one of our core governance philosophy is to collaborate and to have partnership. And we have identified the federal government as our core partner. You know that the Southeast has made a collective demand to have Nnamdi Kanu released. And we basically identified with that and request Mr. President, who in his inaugural address promised the people that he's going to engender national healing and is going to serve with compassion. So we've basically informed him that this would serve as a pointer to his administration's extension of hands of fellowship to Ndibo.
Also, Governor Umo Eno of Akwa Ibom State sought the federal government support for infrastructural development in his state during his visit to the Aso Rock Villa. He emphasized his readiness to collaborate with the government.
Politics is over and governance has started. So Akwa Ibom is an integral part of Nigeria, and we have to work with the federal government to ensure that Akwa Ibom might receive the benefits of democracy. And we cannot do that if we work standing apart. We talked about the road you have just mentioned, the Calabar-Itu road. We will need the president to help us intervene and let's get that, finish the road. We talked about our Ibom deep sea port. We will need the president to also intervene and let's get the seaport.
The president also played host to ExxonMobil executives, including Mr. Liam Malon and Mrs. Adesua Dozie at the State House earlier today. The meeting marks the continuation of his administration's effort to secure the collaboration of critical players in the oil sector towards ensuring stability, transparency, and fair competition in the sector. The newly elected governor of Plateau State also had a meeting with the president at the presidential villa, but the details of their discussion were not revealed. While this visit between the governors and the president laid the groundwork for potential collaboration between governments at the central and subnationals, there is eager anticipation to see what these other political visits would translate to in the coming days. From the presidential villa, Adesua Omoruan for Rise News.
Well, many thanks, Adesua. Now let's get to the heart of the news with our commentators who will give us their take on the events and issues of the day. And today, we have the journalist, political affairs commentator, and Arise News analyst, Dr. Constance Ikokwu, and also Arise News analyst and former chairman of the Daily Trust newspaper editorial board, Mahmud Jega. Well, good to see you both. And looking at that report by this one, you know, sometimes they say it looks like something out of the blues. But for those who understand President Tinubu, they say, well, they're not surprised. Let's start with you, Constance. I saw the G5 there, and I kept looking, and I saw former Governor Tom. Now, let's talk about the meetings, the alliance. We do not have details, but again, there are a series of meetings. First, with the opposition.
Well, there are a series of meetings on account of the fact that we have a new president who was just sworn in, or was inaugurated recently, and he has to start work immediately. And I want to speak to what your guest, Mr. Suko, alluded to when he spoke about diversity, in the course of explaining who the president is. That point is very key. We are a country that is very diverse. I want to take a step further to explain something. Nigeria is a country of many countries within it. I think that most times political operators don't have that in mind when they are taking actions or when they are making policies. It's very important that we have that at the back of our minds, because without that, we cannot function appropriately. And I'll give an analogy. When you look at Europe, for instance, you have so many countries, that are less than 30,000 people, less than 50,000. So, for instance, Liechtenstein, Monaco, San Marino, they are less than 50,000 people. You have Andorra, less than 100,000. Iceland is less than 1 million people. They're very small countries. Those are different nation states that were not merged together. So if you look at Europe and you want to merge the French, the Spanish, the English, the Germans together in one country and maybe give the power to the Germans, they're going to kill one another. Because these are different nation states that want independence and sovereignty and want to rule themselves on their own terms. Come back to Nigeria. This is what we are. The Igbos could be a country. The Yorubas could be a country. The Hausas could be a country. So many other ethnic groups in Nigeria could be a country. What that tells you is that if we are one big nation, there has to be fairness and equitability in the way you run the affairs of the nation. If you want people to feel that they are equal shareholders, to use a business term, and that they have a stake within the society, you have to treat everyone and see them and not make them invincible. Because what we have done in this country over so many years is that you're trying to make people invincible and tell them that they do not matter. Yet, you hear leaders say some very unbelievable things like Nigeria is non-negotiable and we must be united. United on what exactly? If your country is non-negotiable, it should be negotiable actually. And negotiable in the terms that we should be fair to one another and recognize our humanity. And then based on that, we can build a nation state.
And you think that's what the president is doing now?
I don't know if that's what he's doing. I don't know what is on his mind. But the action he's taking, reaching out to different people, it is expected. He should be doing much more than that, not only within his political party, but with other political parties as well.
Mahmud, that's taking off from where Constance stopped. This is one too many, which many have commended the president, saying that in less than a month, the president has done far more reaching out than many presidents in the history of Nigeria.
Well, it is true. I mean, the last 2 weeks have seen, actually some people think he's receiving too many visitors. Apart from the ones Omorwan listed, there are also labor leaders and some even NGO leaders. So it is very good to consult as widely as possible and hear as many perspectives to the issues as possible. But I suspect that very soon he may have to apply the brakes because the protocol people and the security people will step in and say, look, Mr. President, and in any case, by the time he constitutes the Federal Executive Council, there will be regular meetings, lots of memos to study and everything. So in this period that he is relatively free, not having the full structures of government in place, then he probably has the time to receive a lot of, and everybody wants to come. As we said, he's a new president, traditional rulers, religious leaders, regional leaders, labor leaders, all the new governors, even the old ones, they want to come and see him and lay there. But at some point, probably he will have to institutionalize matters more. He can't listen. There are more than 200 million of us in Nigeria. He can't see everybody.
But again, before I come back to Constance, does it also give you the feel that he has he's more open and more receptive to opposition and well-meaning Nigerians? Because some say that the last president, President Buhari, seemed to have had a kind of cabal around him that shut some well-meaningful people who would have been able to give some sound advice, economic advice, political advice on some issues away from the villa.
There was no doubt that the former president was nowhere as open as this. He was a bit aloof, and he spent the first several months of his presidency essentially meeting with permanent secretaries and directors from the various ministries in the name of briefing, which many people thought was a waste of time because they were handing over notes and all that. And it took him months to constitute the cabinet. That was not very exemplary. This president is going probably to the other extreme, very open door policy, everybody coming. But as I said, I don't expect it to last. Even though, since it is in his nature to listen and to receive, he will most probably be doing that much more than the former president was doing. But you see, there are also certain things, because some people come to the presidential villa, they enter, we don't know what they discuss, but when they come out, sometimes they grandstand and say things that, it may not be very advantageous for the presidency to allow that place to be used for grandstanding. I can already see a few examples of that.
And Constance, Governor Mba was there, and one of the key things he spoke about when he came out was the need for the president to revisit the issue of Nnamdi Kanu, and categorically he said the gentleman should be freed.
Yes, I mean, a lot of people have asked, even the former president to free him. If that is done by the current president, I think that it will be fair to his family and his supporters in the region. But beyond that, I think the pressing issue in the Southeast is that a lot of the people in that region feel injured by Nigeria, with or without Nnamdi Kanu. If you release Nnamdi Kanu today, fine. If you don't release him, the issues were there before him. And that was what informed the huge followership that he had when he started his indigenous people of Biafra. You may not agree with his methods, you may not agree with his ideology, you may not agree with all the things that he was set out to do. But you cannot contest the fact that there were so many injustices in our system in Nigeria. And I want to connect it to our model of politics of the country. So we practice a winner-takes-all model. And I don't think that it suits our diversity. It doesn't suit our peculiarities as a nation. And that is why you see many governors or many politicians, they come from their party, once they do not win to the other party. And so everybody wants to carry favor from the party in power and from the president, because the president has a very powerful seat. We do not practice true federalism. That means that he has so much power, he can literally do anything. It's like a mini-god. So as Africans, we have to begin to think about this winner takes all. It might work in Europe, it doesn't work for us. That is also why you see so many different African countries in disarray. You hear Senegal the other day that the president wants to extend his tenure, essentially a third term. And so the whole place is in crisis. And then you go to other countries like Burkina Faso, Cameroon, it's the same system of winner takes all, injustice. I do not see you, I am here, I have the power. It's not sustainable. So we have to rethink that. We have to reimagine
sorry to cut you there, but as we try to rethink that, shouldn't we also be talking categorically? Because it would seem as if you glossed over it, that you may not like his method, but because as a people, we still must talk about the method and the style of the gentleman Nnamdi Kanu, because there are better ways, and that's what people are saying. We're all students of history, and there are ways of agitating. You do not agitate to the extent that you burn down your roof, because some of his followers, some of his people, his kinsmen, have been consumed by what he thought was his pursuit. So are these not things that we should also, if we're talking about this, we shouldn't also gloss over it as we're asking, as we're looking, reviewing what Mba and others have said? They should also be able to say, when you do come out, your style must change, so that because some families are still mourning, all because of the activities of the gentleman and his group.
You're right, but remember that when he started, they were just marching on the streets, unarmed, just expressing their views and saying that we need this, we need it, we want this to happen. They were harmless. And then, the usual way of the Nigerian military, they started killing people. I come from this, so you get phone calls from home. People are killed and dumped in the rivers. Things happen in this country, the impunity and the level of brazen things that the government does in Nigeria against its own people. So that was when it went awry. Nobody supports what he's doing. I don't even know whether he has a method. I don't even know whether he knows what he's doing. Nobody supports violence.
I get
but the government too, you have to be aware that you're dealing with human beings. You're not dealing with machines.
I get you. It's just like the case in Sudan. I'll bring you in, Mahmud. The case of Sudan, every side, counter accusations to the extent that no one gets to know the exact truth, because there are killings on both sides, on the side of the government operatives and on the side of the people. And that is why what Governor Mba and some others are saying is something that the country can sit back and sit down together and actually look at the records and look at where blames will be apportioned and where justice. It comes back to the key things, Mahmud. The G5 specifically used the word when I saw Shey Makinde. He used the word, he said, fairness, justice, and equity. These are weighty and, imperatives that we need as a people.
You see, once somebody is elected president of the Federal Republic, then all these are his major constitutional and political responsibilities to ensure fairness and balance within the country. The trouble is some people put the cart before the horse. You see, during the electoral process, when we were trying to elect leaders, then you bring all these arguments. But to a politician, the most important thing that matters is the votes, to win the election. Because if you don't win the election, like President Tinubu now, if he didn't win the election, he wouldn't be anywhere near the place where he can now administer fairness or goodies or anything. And you spoke about the methods, which are very important. You see, I'm sorry, my sister, anybody who takes up arms against the state, then the state is entitled to respond with all the force that it can muster. Unfortunately, of course, in Africa, we may not do things in the best way like they will do in Europe. But that is why it is important not to start 36, because if you take up arms, you shoot policemen on the road, you shoot soldiers at a roadblock, then they are bound to respond. and their response could be disproportionate, and innocent people might actually suffer more than the armed persons who are doing the killings. So you see this appeal that the governor of Enugu State made, and before that, I think the Ohaneze in Igbo.
Yeah.
At the minimum, the president will say, well, okay, there is an ongoing court case. The government can always hide behind that he is being charged to court, but the president can resolve the matter. However, before he can do that, there has to be an assurance that if you release him, he will not go back. You should operate a radio station from Sweden and say, kill them, kill the police, kill this one, kill that one. No state in the world will take that kind of thing lying down. That is the problem. So it's not just to say government is killing people, bodies are found. The government are also killing people and bodies have been found. They have beheaded soldiers, beheaded policemen, beheaded a local government chairman, shoot at everybody in a luxury car. No. Things cannot go on like that.
Well, I'm hoping that in the days to come, that's what we really do hope that people can do. Because now you talked about radio station. For a bit, we forgot what happened in Rwanda. It started with a radio station.
Right.
The media, where people were actually maligned and took up arms against each other. Quickly, let's close on if we can do this in a minute, and it has to do with Tuesday. What are we likely to see on Tuesday? Because I actually started with a on that, but I was saving it for last, but I'm told that we had just a minute, we can do that. On Tuesday, the Senate, they'll be electing their leadership.
Well, it seemed like everything was sure, according to what the party wanted, but now it looks like it's in the air. What we're going to see between today and Tuesday is, solid Machiavellian maneuvers, as they know how to do, the National Assembly members, and we'll watch and see who wins the race for the Senate and the speakership.
And Mahmud?
I think most likely the candidates anointed by the APC and the presidency would win. And some other people are still rebelling, saying they must contest. But the way things are going, I think they have probably locked enough majority votes to elect those persons, despite everything that might happen between now and Tuesday. That's the way it looks to me anyway.
Well, it's a fine place for us to leave it. Constance Ikokwu, many thanks for your time, and of course, Mahmud Jega. Well, that's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Do join us again next week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye, and many thanks for watching.